Welcome to Supply Chain Talks. My name is Kristian Mortensen. I'm a Senior Director, Global Partnership and Alliances at project44. And today, I'm also your host for Supply Chain Talks. project44 has hand-curated a strong partner network in order to extend and enable the best possible customer experience. And during spring and summer, we welcome you to our partner series, Supply Chain Talks. These conversations touch on current developments in global supply chains and the world of logistics. Today, we very warmly welcome Mr. Jonathan Raemdonck to Supply Chain Talks. Jonathan is the head of growth at SupplyStack. Jonathan, I'm very happy to have you join.
I'm very happy to join. Thank you for the invitation, Kristian.
No problem. Jonathan, just to get started, tell me or tell all of us about yourself and how you got so passionate about supply chain and logistics.
Well, to be honest, I would have never thought that I would end up in the world of supply chain because actually I have a computer science background and was always interested in the latest technologies and the gadgets. But I quickly came to realize that technology as such didn't really fascinate me that much. It was rather the potential of the technology. So how can you use technology to solve real business challenges? And you know what, within supply chain, there's really a complex domain with a lot of business challenges today. So in the past, I've worked 10 years at Trimble Transportation in Europe, a leading provider of high-end telematic solutions for carriers. So as yourself, I also know the other side of the table, the carrier side.
And so do I. Like we both know, like this world of logistics is, say, perhaps traditional and maybe in some cases old-fashioned. So is there a better way to manage transportation?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. And I think it's also a question that is asked in a lot of boardrooms today, I believe, because transportation as such has really taken center stage the past year. Yeah? And in the past, transportation was more about moving freight from A to B in the most cost-efficient way. But today, it's a lot more complex. I mean, for example, the pandemic the past year, it's not really introducing new problems, but it's actually magnifying already existing problems tenfold. And so we shifted from transportation, moving freight from A to B in the most cost-efficient way, to logistics really becoming a game of exceptions. And you know what? The more classic systems that were designed like a decade ago or so, they focus on a lot of managing that cost optimization and so on. And don't get me wrong, I mean, the cost is really important, but equally or even more important today is transportation excellence. So how do you make sure that goods move from A to B in a way that you meet your customers' expectations, that you meet your sustainability goals, that you meet your budget and so on? So the question today is more about how do you navigate in today's complexity of exceptions? And we believe that transportation management is really shifting towards transportation monitoring. So it's not just about managing cost, it's about managing complexity. And yes, I also believe that this means that companies need a different tool set. One which is designed more for the world of complex logistics today. And this tool set can be like solutions like project44, providing real-time visibility, but also a modern TMS, which is focusing on managing those exceptions.
Let me try this one on you if this sounds familiar. In the morning, step number 1, the shipper sends an email with transport details to the carrier. The carrier opens email and retypes all the information into their carrier TMS, followed by step 3 or to 10 or something like that, which is missing data, mistakes, human errors, which leads to more emails, phone calls, and then comes the incident spreadsheet. So basically, different carriers have different capabilities and require a different way of collaborating.
Yeah, this certainly sounds familiar, especially as I mentioned, I have been working on the other side also. And I sat down together with a lot of dispatchers at the carrier side And you see this on a daily basis, all the phone calls, the spreadsheets, even faxes. I've even seen situations where they get the shipment details via email, where the shipper just took a photograph of the order. So this is really complex sometimes, I believe. And but I still also believe that the carrier, they play really a vital role in the whole transportation process, of course. And collaboration is key for this. And indeed, in an ideal world, everything would be integrated. Okay? The shipper would just send all the information directly to the carrier's TMS system, and magic happens and everything is automated. But the reality is that, yeah, you have carriers in different sizes and different levels of maturity. And also, in addition, I think you have to look from the carrier's perspective. It has to make business-wise sense to integrate the carrier TMS with the shipper. Why would a carrier spend like 5,000 euros to integrate his carrier TMS with the shipper if it's only a limited scope, for example, a couple of loads a month with a contract for only 1 year? Then the numbers just don't add up. It doesn't make sense for the carrier to integrate. I was actually talking last week also with a large Belgium carrier, and he also confirmed that. He said, okay, why wouldn't I integrate with a shipper or a customer if it doesn't really make sense to do it for just a couple of loads a week or per month? So thinking that integrating 100% of your carriers, I think that is really like a utopia. And that's also the reason why we as SupplyStack in our modern TMS, we offer different ways of collaborating or working together with your carriers. And just to name some, we have like smart emails. That means that we send the shipper can send the shipment details towards the carriers in a nice email with all the details, an attachment, a PDF, all the information is available. And the carrier just receives this email with 2 buttons in it. One button is to accept the shipment, and the other one is just to reject the shipment. So really simple. Don't have to log into a certain portal, just clicking one button, and you can work together with your carriers. But we also, of course, have like the carrier portal. This is more for the frequently used carriers. They can have an overview of all the shipments, the history, book slots, and so on. A third option is that you can eventually, for the larger carriers typically, or the ones that you work together with the most often, you can integrate with the carrier TMS so that shipment details flow from the shipper TMS directly into the carrier's transportation management system. And then even, we also have like a driver application, a smartphone application that they can use, but that's only useful in specific closed ecosystems where you have like fixed carriers driving full time for a specific shipper. So this is all about collaboration with your carriers. I just mentioned a couple of examples how you can send shipments towards your carriers. And equally important is getting information back from your carriers, I believe. And that's also why we integrate with solutions like project44 to get visibility data, or we get status updates coming from the parcel carrier and so on. So what I'm trying to say here is that you really need to have like this hybrid way of working together with your carriers and offer them like a menu of different possibilities or different ways of collaborating with you as a shipper, so that they have the flexibility also, and you yourself also have the flexibility, because you're not limited to work together with only the large carriers. You can also work together with the smaller ones. So I think that's really important when it comes to collaboration with the carriers.
Great, Jonathan. So what I hear is different teams, different people, different carriers, different needs, and technology and logistics, both to you and me, I think is about making people's lives easier, and it's about giving them the opportunity to excel at what they're doing. So from your point, what are the typical signs that it's time to modernize your supply chain technology?
Yeah, I think the biggest sign is frustration. People working overtime, people feeling continuously this feeling of overwhelm, having exploding inboxes. This is a clear signal that the manual way of working just doesn't cut it anymore. And even today, I mean, the past pandemic doesn't make it any easier. I've speaking with people that say to me, okay, where in the past, when I had a question for a colleague, I asked it at the coffee machine, but today people book a meeting for a Zoom meeting of 1 hour just to handle one specific question. So it's a lot more complex today to manage transportation, I believe. And for example, I've also been speaking with people responsible for inbound logistics coming from Asia to Europe, and they're also struggling because with the Suez Canal, they had to suddenly start shipping stuff from China using trucks to Europe, and this was costing them like 20,000 euros for one single shipment. So this is really a hectic situation, and it's really difficult to manually keep track of all those operations. So we believe that technology and logistics is indeed about making people's lives easier. And we believe that the role that technology will play in this whole game of exceptions is transportation automation. So basically, technology being used to automate manual tasks so that people can focus on exceptions. They can focus on the customer, more strategic tasks, instead of chasing documents, calling carriers, calculating costs, and maybe manually selecting the right carriers and so on. So I think that there's really a shift happening within transportation management. And I think that people will evolve from being like data clerks to transportation operators. And they will be looking at dashboards, and when something goes wrong, something will turn red, and they can drill down to the actual data, and will have the possibilities to solve that issue that they are seeing. So that's something that we really believe. How can technology make people's lives easier? And transportation, we believe, is a really important, or transportation automation is really an important aspect in the whole process or shift.
Great, Jonathan. I was working in a trucking company for 6 years. So I personally know that in logistics, so many things can and will go wrong. I don't know if, like me, you have seen that in some companies, the most commonly used platform to manage these incidents is the good old Excel. And what's the alternative?
Yeah, Excel, I think, imagine that one day Microsoft would pull the plug on Excel. I think the world economy would collapse. You would have a great crisis because, I mean, don't get me wrong, Excel is a great tool, but the moment that you copy paste something from your ERP system or WMS system or whatever system into a spreadsheet, you lose all the context. You leave behind all the information which is linked to that specific data that you're copying in the Excel spreadsheet. And you actually get like orphaned data, and it's just a snapshot. So that's one big issue that you have with spreadsheets, I believe. Secondly, if you want to maintain these spreadsheets, it's really cumbersome. You have to manually keep track of it, and it's actually, you will make mistakes. If you would count all the mistakes in business plans, for example, based on Excel spreadsheets, it's a huge mistakes that can be made, I think. So I believe that really the system that you use on a daily basis to manage your transportation should be by design built to manage exceptions. It's not something that you just add on top of it. It should be by design in the core of the system, designed for exceptions. And not just for the execution part, but I mean for the whole process, for everything from sourcing to planning, execution, monitoring, and then eventually also the settlement. During the whole transportation management process, things will go wrong. And then it's all about how can you solve them as soon as possible. So I think what distinguishes a classic TMS from a more modern TMS like ours is the fact that how do you monitor for these exceptions? How do you alert people? And how can you basically collaborate and work together in solving those exceptions? Yeah. So yes, I think Excel, great tool, but it's not built for managing all of your exceptions, I believe.
Great. Jonathan, we're nearing the end, but tell me, what's the one thing that makes you happy about your work?
Yeah. Well, I think that would be the satisfaction that I get from changing changing the status quo within transportation management. But and you know this as much as I do, Kristian, that the technology and logistics is really gaining so much traction lately. And a lot of companies are realizing this, digitalization efforts and so on. But they are really seeking guidance because often they are blindfolded about by buzzwords like AI and machine learning and blockchain and so on. But as I mentioned in the beginning, it's not about the technologies. It's about what problems can they solve for you. And everything that we do at SupplyStack, we always ask ourselves, okay, how will this make people's life easier? How can we free people from the manual tasks and automate all these kind of manual and boring stuff? Basically being able to contribute to the shift that we see happening from transportation management to transportation monitoring. Yeah, that's something which is, for myself, I find very, very satisfying, to be honest. Oh yes, and we also have great coffee in the office.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just my last question. So SupplyStack and P44, we have partnered. And from the, let's say, shipper point of view, what's the biggest benefit of that?
Well, I think that the biggest benefits for the shipper and also for SupplyStack, to be honest, is that we can tap into this vast, large carrier network that you have. So basically, we can tap from all the visibility data that you have into our modern TMS. And we don't have to care about all the individual carrier connections or the telematics or the changes, because you know this also, Kristian, that one day the transportation company can use like a telematics system from Trimble, but the next day it might be Transix. So maintaining all those complexities is where project44 is really great at. And we don't have to care about that. We just know that the information that we get will be there and it's relevant and timely. And I think that's the biggest value and benefit, because we can then easily add context to our customers' daily operations. I think that's one of the key points that I find as a benefit, a huge benefit of working together with project44.
And we likewise see really good benefits of partnering with SupplyStack. So Jonathan, thank you for that partnership, and thank you for joining Supply Chain Talks this week. And for everyone else, see you next week. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.